Hi, this is John. The following is an interview between then Air America's Randi Rhodes and the creator of the complete 9/11 timeline, Paul Thompson. This took place on September 12, 2006. The purpose of this interview was to critique ABC's propaganda film about 9/11 called The Path to 9/11. As it happens, I stumbled across this interview the other day, and yesterday on Facebook, I made a rant about the lack of coverage for 9/11 Press for Truth. Before I read to you this rant, I want to say that it was my father that gave me the money to give to the makers of 9/11 Press for Truth, and it could probably be seen as an investment, but truthfully, I never cared about the money. I just wanted this documentary in the public domain. Here is part of my rant. Part of the reason I donated the money to complete the film 9/11 Press for Truth was because I was absolutely positively sure that the corporate news would not be able to ignore it. How could they possibly ignore a documentary starring these widows I had been seeing on the TV? How could they ignore Paul Thompson's timeline? I never thought it possible. Not in a million years. But it happened. Unbelievably, it happened. Almost as unbelievably as Trump winning the election. The media in this country completely and totally ignored the film. Not the movie critics, which all praised it, in parentheses, those people were probably taking a stand of their own, end parentheses, but the corporate news completely ignored it. They knew about it too. There were campaigns to get the media to cover the documentary. There were campaigns to get the congressmen to watch it. They were all well aware of its existence and yet did nothing. That's the end of part of my rant. There was one error I caught in this. Randi says it was the Jersey Girls that accompanied Paul Thompson at the National Press Club. As a matter of fact, it was 9/11 family members Donna Marsh O'Connor, Christina Kamenek, and Michelle Little, along with executive producer for the film Kyle Hentz and Paul Thompson. Their press conference took place right across the hall from Tom Keene and Lee Hamilton's press conference. Only one news outlet in the country covered the 9/11 Press for Truth press conference, and it was a local NBC affiliate called Eyewitness Politics. One more thing. This may come across as a partisan conversation, Clinton versus Bush, etc., and on Randi's part it may have been. But the fact of the matter is, ABC's so-called documentary was specifically made to point the finger at Clinton instead of Bush. We were not allowed to question Bush about 9/11, but Clinton and 9/11 was fair game at the time. Here is the interview between Randi Rhodes and Paul Thompson.
34 after. When you talk 9/11, then you talk to Paul Thompson. Period. End of story. Why? Because he just did the work. You know, there's no substitute for doing the work. A lot of people, you know, especially these, if you're 20-something and you're listening to me, let me tell you something right now. There is no substitute. There is no shortcut. There is no workaround for doing the work. Period. If you can't get what you need to get in your head, then it's not there. Can't fake it, can't flub it, there's no workaround. Either you got it in your head or you don't. Paul Thompson was just a researcher who was fascinated with the amount of information that was not coming forward about what happened to us on that day. That there was no investigation until 2002, and only because the Bush administration was shamed into it by widows who voted for him, by the way. You know, grief knows no political party. That's why when we were struck, no one was political in this country anymore. Bush has managed to divide us again on this moment, in this moment of unity, worldwide unity, I might add. So I wanted Paul to watch the movie. Yesterday I was watching him on C-SPAN because that is what I do, because there is no workaround. You got to have what you need in your head, or that's it. Can't fake it. And I saw him at the National Press Club yesterday with some of the Jersey Girls on 9/11. Their stories were as articulate, and they have so much information. It's incredible, but it was a very stressful, emotional day. It was 9/11, for God's sake. It was the 5th anniversary of the death of their husbands. Paul was there begging the press to press for the Truth. He's got a movie called 9/11 Press for the Truth. And I saw like 5 reporters show up at the press club to talk about open-sourced information that Paul got from the press. But it was buried in this teeny newspaper. It was put on page 823. Anyway, I wanted him to watch the movie and tell me what he thought about it. So please welcome Paul Thompson back to the show. Hi, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Well, you were fabulous yesterday at the press club. I mean, I sent you an email as I was watching you because it was live, and I couldn't believe that nobody showed up. But more importantly, I wanted to know, did you watch this movie, and what did you think?
I sure did. Thanks to you. You said I should watch it and give some comments, so I suffered through it. Yeah, I've got a list. There's a lot of problems.
I have a list too. You go, and then and we'll see if I'm half as good as you. Go ahead.
Well, sure. Well, first, I don't know if I haven't been listening. If you talked about the people behind this film, and did you mention about David Horowitz and his whole bunch?
I alluded to it, but if you'd like to explain that part now, that would be fine with me too.
Well, yeah, I recommend people go to the Huffington Post and search for a post there by Max Blumenthal. He really goes into it. Basically, David Horowitz is this pretty right-wing figure, and he's allied himself with some Christian fundamentalists who are keen on their plan is to take back Hollywood from the liberals and make it a bastion of sort of Christian fundamentalist ideology. And if you look at all these people involved in this project, the film's director and the producer and so forth, they're all
David Cunningham. Okay, David Cunningham is the film's director, and obviously he is the son of, when you look into it, Lauren Cunningham, who is the founder of the right-wing evangelical group Youth with a Mission, and that they set up a film institute called the Film Institute, which according to their own mission statement is, quote, dedicated to a godly transformation and revolution to and through the film and television industry. As part of TFI's long-term strategy, Cunningham helped place interns from Youth with a Mission in the film industry in jobs where they would have some impact to transform Hollywood from the inside out. So basically he hired moles.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me you're on top of this because you know your stuff. But, talking about problems with the film, I noticed this little scene about Muhammad Atta, and he tells a story about how he met a priest in Hamburg and kind of tells the priest was saying, turn the other cheek, be peaceful and everything. And I thought that was interesting, knowing that this is pretty much Christian fundamentalist background, because the whole scene really contrasts Christianity, setting it up as a religion of peace and love, with Islam as a religion of war. So you get these little digs all throughout the movie.
Oh, there were a lot. In fact, instead of showing the streets downtown, they honed in on the sign of Church Street.
Yeah.
I saw that, and also they had Betty Young, pray for us, pray for us, pray for us.
Yeah, and Bush telling everyone to pray. There's a lot of these types of things.
And then Bush includes it in the speech that he gives, which is, now we interrupt this BS for lunatic ramblings from the President of the United States. And he says, yeah, they brought us to our knees, but not in the way that he had in mind. We fell to our knees and we prayed. Like, I don't want a president that falls to his knees and prays when we're attacked. I want a president that says, I know who did this, let's go get him. That's what I want.
There's this other bias in the film that I thought was more amusing, which is that the exaggeration of the role of ABC News. They made one of their big characters, John Miller, who is an ABC News reporter, and guess what he does today? He's an FBI press spokesman.
I know, he's the deputy public affairs guy at the FBI, works inside the Bush administration, and it is stunning.
So you could see this as an attempt to kind of kiss up to his vital role as press secretary. And then even they have things like when al-Zawahiri calls after the missile strike in Afghanistan in 1998, they point out it's an ABC employee who gets the call.
Yeah.
And all through, we see in great detail on the day of 9/11 what John Miller, the ABC reporter, does. His van is driving all around New York City, and he basically is just a guy who's like miles away from the crash and really has nothing to do with anything. And then meanwhile, we get next to nothing about what, say, President Bush was doing during the time. It's just, some of these things are just bizarre.
Well, the movie is just, I mean, I knew I needed a whole big stack of index cards last night to, take notes, because the movie starts with Bush in the classroom, but nothing has happened yet. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Because Bush decided after the first plane hit the World Trade Center, a full 13 minutes into the attack, Bush decided to go ahead with his photo op in a second-grade classroom. Meanwhile, this movie shows that all of Washington knows exactly what it is. They know it's a terrorist attack. They know it's Osama bin Laden. Richard Clark is in the White House. He's calling the shots. He's organizing because he knows it's Al-Qaeda. Everybody knows it's Al-Qaeda except for the President of the United States. He doesn't know.
Right.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of sleight of hands in the film, where they cleverly move things around to make political points, that are kind of subtle. The one that really killed me, and I also have to mention, if you haven't mentioned this to your readers, a quote from this Cyrus Nora, I don't know how you pronounce his name.
Yeah. He's an Iranian-American conservative neocon who would like for us to attack Iran. So
right. Well,
I think this was his gift to the Bush administration so that the Bush administration would attack Iran.
Who knows? But he actually says in an interview a few weeks ago, he said that, quote, he's talking about the 9/11 report details the Clinton administration's response or lack of response to Al-Qaeda and how this emboldened bin Laden to keep attacking Americans' interests.
Right.
There was simply no response, nothing, right. Unquote. So really, you see this through the film that he's trying to make the point that Clinton did absolutely nothing. Yet, in fact, Clinton, he had his issues. He wasn't perfect, but
no, he
certainly did a much better job than Bush did. And anything that was a success during the Clinton administration, they made a point of either not showing it or spinning it away. Like when they have Diana Dean, she's this border guard, and she arrests Ahmed Rassam, who's coming across the Seattle area bringing a bomb to blow up the L.A. airport. Now, that happens during the Clinton administration. So they'd say, there's, score one for the Clinton administration. They stopped an attack there, right? But they have this little sentence just kind of like being played in the background when someone's listening to the radio where they're quoting a news report saying, Diana Dean said the other day that she was not given any sort of general warning that there might be an upcoming terror attack and that one should be alert. So by that, they're saying that it was just pure luck, pure her, and has nothing to do with the Clinton administration. Whereas in actual fact, the Clinton administration did put out a warning at that time to the first responders to say, look, we have evidence that there's upcoming attacks and be vigilant. But this film won't even begrudge even a minor little point like that. So
I know. It's the scary part was there was just enough truth and just enough ID of just enough real people in real jobs to make it really good propaganda. I want you to hold on a second. I want to talk to you about. There was a scene in there that was my absolute favorite lie, and I want to ask you if you know anything about it. Okay?
Sure.
All right. We're talking to Paul Thompson. If you want to see a really good documentary, serious documentary, based on open source news information and the Jersey Girls investigations, their testimony to the 9/11 Commission, then you need to see a movie called 9/11 Press for the Truth. Now, you can either go to one of the 40 cities where it's playing, and if you are in one of the 40 cities it's playing, go find it in a neighborhood near you, or you can actually go to Paul's website, 9/11 Press for the Truth, and you can host a viewing party and start to mitigate or undo the damage that was done last night by showing the real facts of what we know to be true. 45 after.
Randi Rhodes, now with 20% more attitude.
Randy, I have friends in Iraq, okay?
Listen, you should be in Iraq. You're 22 and I was 22. I was in the military. Why aren't you there?
I'm 24 years old.
Then
just
come.
because...
All right, 10 minutes after, we're talking to Paul Thompson, who has that Center for Cooperative Research website that has the complete 9/11 timeline. There's also a Katrina timeline on his website. He is the master of the timeline, and that is what you do when you have a very large problem and you're trying to figure it out. You make a timeline. Everybody does it. Detectives do it. Lawyers do it. We had to do it. Paul did it for 9/11. I used to do it for OJ. I was like, okay, Cato, here's the knock at 9:03. This is what you do. You make a timeline, and this is the most awesome timeline ever. And there are no conclusions. There's just information there. So, listen, if you want to see the movie in Oakland, California, this weekend on Friday at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, Press for the Truth opens on Friday, and will run for a full week out there. So if you would like to go by and see it, it's a good place to go by and see it. All right, Paul, last night I'm watching the movie, and they're talking this great thing about these Predator drones and how fabulous they are, and they're the best tool they got until Osama bin Laden's Air Force flew by one of our drones and shot it out of the sky. And I'm sitting there saying, this is amazing. There was a Predator drone in the sky almost throughout the entire Clinton administration, and the truth is that when Bush came into office, he killed the drone project until after 2001.
Yeah, they wanted to get that weaponized, they say, so you could not only use it to look at something on the ground, but you could immediately launch a missile from it right there. So instead of having to send a missile take 6 hours to get there or something, it would just take a matter of a couple minutes and you hit your target. And actually, they rushed that through, starting in the late Clinton administration, a kind of a crash program, and they had it ready about late spring 2001. So then, what's the holdup? You've got that going, and then all the way through 9/11, up until days before, they're still kind of having these discussions about using it, who's going to be held responsible, blah, blah, blah. And then, immediately after 9/11, within days, all of a sudden they're using it. All of a sudden,
I know.
all these restrictions are thrown off. So they had that capability. They could have done a lot with it during that summer, but they chose not to do anything with it. But, of course, it's all blamed on Clinton in this film.
I know, and the disappearance of the Predators in Afghanistan occurred clearly in 2001, when, of course, the Bush administration never had one meeting of the principals that were charged with keeping us safe. Holdovers from the Clinton administration who understood this problem cold. I mean, they got it. They knew it. Richard Clark knew it. George Tenet knew it. So did John O'Neill. They knew this stuff. They understood. And, I went back and I reviewed some of the newspaper articles from the transition period of the Bush administration. And I found the old article where Bush goes in, I think it was the 4th of September, or he goes in to get briefed, and all they want is briefings on Iraq. That's all they want. They don't want to hear about 9/11. They don't want to hear about terrorism. They just wanted to hear about Iraq. It was Monday, September... No, that's today.
January.
Yeah, January 4th.
Yeah, just, right during the transition, Bush comes into power in January 2001. That's Paul O'Neill, the Treasury Secretary, said, that's all they were talking about. That was item one was Iraq. About the drone, they did withdraw it at the end of the Clinton administration, but that had mostly to do with the weather because winters in Afghanistan are so rough. So it was presumed that when spring came around again that they would reinstitute them there, and that never happened.
Right.
But I have a quote here from the film that was just, I thought, real classic quote of propaganda, utter propaganda, is they show Condoleezza Rice reading the presidential daily briefing, the famous one in August 6th, bin Laden determined to strike in U.S., right? And I guess they figured that was too big to ignore. So then they have her, in a conference saying, and here's a quote, as a result of the presidential daily briefing, the president is tired of swatting flies. He believes Al-Qaeda is a real threat, and he demands real action, unquote. So you get this impression that Bush gets this briefing, and he's just all action. He's just up there and, just in charge. And the actual fact, which the 9/11 Commission found out, was that there was not a single thing that the Bush administration did in the wake of that presidential daily briefing. They didn't warn anybody, the airports, the military, the pilots of aircraft, first responders anywhere in the country. He didn't do anything. He never said anything along the lines of, I believe Al-Qaeda is a real threat and demands real action. This is just pure invention of the filmmakers. And you know, it's just amazing.
He was on vacation. They didn't even show him being briefed because they would have had to have shown the president on vacation and staying on vacation. They showed Condi in Washington, but Bush was clearing brush. He was on his ranch. He wouldn't come off vacation.
Right.
I mean, it was stunning to me. It was just stunning. And, you know, my favorite line, though, has to do with the Predator scene. Now you've got the composite CIA character who was never on the ground eyeballing Osama bin Laden. That never happened. And now he's with Masood, the lion of the Panjshir Valley, who's assassinated 2 days before 9/11 by the Taliban. And, of course, Masood is with this composite CIA character. And the two of them are looking at Osama bin Laden through the CIA cam. And they're the CIA cam is trained on bin Laden. It's got photos of bin Laden. And Masood says, you know, I don't understand. Talking about Clinton, he says, you know, I don't understand this president. You know, Reagan, he understood. I'm like, what?
And then they say, are there no real men in Washington?
Are they all cowards?
They're all cowards. You know, but they just play so fast and loose with the facts. Like, to give you another example, at one point, Richard Clark, the counterterrorism czar, he asks Richard Myers, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, basically the head of the military, are there any fighters near Washington, D.C.? This is happening during the middle of the attacks.
This is when I thought of you.
Right, yeah. Myers says that the closest planes are in Detroit, Michigan, which is like halfway across the country. I wonder why they just randomly chose that town out of any towns, because the actual fact is that there were fighters in a base less than 200 miles away from Washington, and they'd been on alert since long before this phone call, just waiting for somebody to, you know, to send them up in the air and defend Washington. So, and what's really amazing, too, is that Thomas Keane, the head of the 9/11 Commission, you know, he actually says he stands by this product, and that he was an official consultant for it.
He was the co-executive producer.
Right, and yet, you know, and yesterday they quizzed him at the National Press Club. There was actually this little, you know, we had our conference,
right,
press conference.
Right, can you hold on, because there's going to be a long break. It's a news break, but we're out of time here.
Oh, sure, I'll be happy to keep going.
Okay, great. Hold on.
You're listening to The Randi Rhodes Show. It's been a few days since President Bush said he'd catch Osama dead or alive. Let's check in with the Osama clock and see how long it's been. Osama clock, how long has it been?
1,821 days.
Osama bin Laden and other terrorists are still in hiding. Our message to them is clear. No matter how long it takes,
1,821 days.
America will find you, and we will bring you to justice.
This check of the Osama clock is brought to you by
ABC's The Path to 9/11, full of bigger holes than the one currently at the World Trade Center site.
It should have been on the Sci-Fi Channel, man. Really, it should have been. I mean, it's going to win an Emmy for Best Comedy. I'm talking to Paul Thompson, who put together a website called the Center for Cooperative Research, where he put his complete 9/11 timeline, which is also now a book called The Complete 9/11 Timeline, but it weighs more than your head. It's huge. I carry it around religiously. Some carry a protractor when they're a geek. I carry that book. And, of course, now it's a movie, which was unbelievable. I couldn't wait to see it because I thought, how are they going to make this into a movie? And they did. They really did. It's called It's called 9/11, Press for the Truth. It's playing this weekend beginning Friday in Oakland, California at the Grand Lake Theater. It is in about 40 cities. You'll have to go to the website, 911pressforthetruth.com. And you can host a party if you want to, get the movie, show it to your friends, and counteract all this propaganda that's going on. And then in the middle of the propaganda last night, the president comes on TV talking about 9/11 this and 9/11 that and 9/11 this and 9/11 that. And then he says Iraq is the central front in the war on terror. Thank you, Heineken. I didn't have time to get the coffee. I never ask anybody to get the coffee. Thank you. So Paul is joining us again to go over some of the other things. Where did we leave off?
Well, I just wanted to make a quick correction. The website for Ray Novichesky's great film, Press for Truth, is actually 911pressfortruth.com. You threw a kind of a "the" in there.
I did, and you have to be so specific, because my website is therandyroadshow.com, and if they go to therandyroadshow.com, they will actually have a link to yours without the. I'm bad about that.
Well, I was going to tell you a story about what happened to Tom Kane yesterday, but first I just really want to quickly mention a couple of other really ridiculous falsehoods from this film.
Oh, good.
There was a mention in there with one U.S. intelligence agent talking to another, and he complains about how the intelligence budget has been cut in half and says we can't translate messages for weeks or months. Both statements completely untrue. Clinton, he just doubled the budget of the intelligence agencies and then doubled it again and then doubled it again. I mean, and yet this somehow slips through Tom Keen's supposed watchdog of getting the facts in this film. The messages, if there was an important message from Al-Qaeda, they could translate it within 1 hour.
Yeah.
That was very well documented. So they're just, making stuff up just out of whole cloth.
Well,
Rice, in another example, someone tells her about all the different warnings coming in, and she says, quote, "We're on it. The president is meeting regularly with the head of the CIA."
Right.
Which, again, Clinton, at the end of his administration, he was meeting about every 2 or 3 days with his terrorism task force. Meanwhile, Bush really didn't have any cabinet-level meetings his entire 8 months before the 9/11 attack. So that's just throwing history on its head completely. I could go on and on.
I can, too. And another one that really upset me, because this is about a man who gave his entire life to the FBI, became the counterterrorism head of the FBI's counterterrorism department. Actually, they misrepresented what happened to him in Yemen. They did accurately include that Barbara Bodine, who was formerly the she was warned about the coal disaster, first of all, when she was ambassador in Yemen. But before that, she was the deputy principal officer in Baghdad, Iraq, under Reagan. Under Bush, she was deputy chief of mission in Kuwait. She was there when they were invaded. Then she's in Yemen when the coals attacked. She also worked for Bob Dole and Henry Kissinger. And by the time she gets to Yemen, of course, she's in charge of this fledgling democracy known as Yemen, which is completely owned by the Bin Laden Construction Company. But the lie that they told that was so offensive to me was that Paul O'Neill left his briefcase at an FBI. He didn't leave his briefcase. His briefcase was stolen. And his briefcase was stolen. It was in the newspaper. And the only thing that was missing was a cigarette lighter. And this happened right after the Clinton administration intervened in Yemen so that Paul O'Neill could get to sit down with his agents and question the suspects who Barbara Bodine would not allow Paul O'Neill access to. O'Neill comes back to the United States for the holidays. He's spending all his time in Yemen doing this work. He comes back for the holidays, and Bush has stolen the presidency at the time, and then they bar O'Neill from returning to Yemen once Bush is the president of the United States to continue his investigation. So Bush pulls the plug on his access to the suspects, and then after he returns from Yemen after the holidays, he's attending a seminar in Tampa of the FBI, and that's when his briefcase was stolen.
Yeah, and I should mention it was stolen for a grand total of approximately 1 hour.
1 hour,
and
right.
I don't think they even opened up the briefcase during that 1 hour. I don't think that they were able to get into it. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. But I don't know how much time we got, but I want to mention a few things about Tom Kane, because he's the executive producer of this. So yesterday he was at this National Press Club where we were holding our press conference with these widows trying to demand a reopening of the 9/11 investigation. They were kind of back-to-back events. So, a lot of journalists came to hear him and Hamilton, and they couldn't walk like 50 feet over to hear our press conference just before, which was really discouraging. I mean, there was a 2-paragraph mention about this call for a new investigation in the Washington Post today, 2 whole paragraphs. But, you know, when Kane and Hamilton were there, Hamilton actually kind of went off, you know, they're the heads of the 9/11 Commission, and he said that the path to 9/11 was a disservice to the country, which was a real slap in the face of the person he's standing right next to. Yeah. Meanwhile, Tom Kane, he says that he didn't even bother to see the film. And, you know, yet he still goes on defending him. What kind of consultant or executive, you know, involved person is this if he doesn't even bother to see what the final cut is? So what that says to me is I really hope that will cast more doubt on the 9/11 Commission report itself, which I think was a whitewash. We're beginning to see if this is the guy, this is how good he was with policing Path to 911, you know, what got in the 9/11 Commission report that was pretty much BS? I think, from my research, quite a lot. So I hope this will tarnish the reputation of that report, which somehow people hold it up. It's really not. It's a whitewash.
Yeah, I know it is. It absolutely is. And last night, I mean, the president inserting himself in the middle of a 9/11 anniversary. How many times did he say 9/11, Heineken? What, like 16? He said 16 times 9/11, and then Iraq as the central front of the war on terror. I mean, he lies about this constantly. He said, if we yield to men like Osama bin Laden, our enemies will be emboldened. You know, he lies about Osama and the Iraq connection in the past. Now he's threatening us with the Osama-Iraq connection in the future. I mean, he's got it covered. And he's got these propagandists that are just taking history and turning it on its head, but including just enough truth, just like Bush does. 9/11 really did happen. We really are in Iraq. Just enough truth, and then conflating those truths into complete and utter propaganda. Now, as far as a new investigation, we totally need a new one that, A, is not a presidentially year-and-a-half late commission that was just cobbled together with people that would let the president get away with giving his, I don't want to call it testimony because, you know, Bush was never under oath at the 9/11 Commission. He went with Cheney. They went together, and they both told the 9/11 Commission whatever they wanted to tell them in closed session, and that was it. No one was ever sworn. You know, there's no truth that came out of the Bush administration regarding 9/11. And now you say Tom Kane didn't put his name on something that he didn't even see the final cut of and is standing by the thing. Yeah, you kind of wonder, what did they lie about in the 9/11 Commission meetings, and what did they lie about in the report?
Yeah, you know, the Jersey girls and the other victims' relatives that were pushing for the commission in the first place, their original vision was to say, let's have scholars, let's have judges, let's have, you know, people who are non-biased instead of a bunch of politicians, all of which had pretty much really gross conflicts of interest. And, you know, we never had that, and we still need it. And every day there's more stuff coming out, more information coming out, showing just how little we know and how much we need a new investigation.
Well, what's really stunning to me is, at the bottom of all of this, you know, madness, is that 5 years after 9/11, we have no idea what the hell happened to us, why it happened to us, where the person who did it is, where is Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban, where is Ayman al-Zawahiri? He's in a studio somewhere putting out videotapes, threatening us. Yesterday, he's now in a studio and he's created his own documentary. He's actually sitting down with an interviewer now. He's being asked questions. He's answering them. It's translated now. He's got Chiron. He's got a real studio somewhere.
Yeah.
It's stunning to me.
It is.
Anyway, I hope people will go to, well, I'll never get your website, right? I barely get mine. So say it.
911pressfortruth.com. They can go there. They can sign up for hosting a house party to help spread the word. They can get a copy of the DVD there, and they can see where the showings are, like this one coming up in Oakland this Friday, a week at the Grand Lake Theater. So I recommend people check it out one way or another.
And if you can't remember, because I never can, somebody else's website, everybody knows mine because they're always posting on it. TheRandyRhodeShow.com has a link to Paul Thompson's both websites, to the Timeline website and to the 9/11 Press for the Truth website. So if you can get to mine, you can get to Paul's. And I suggest you do, because we've got to show people what really happened as far as we know. Thank you for taking so much time with me, Paul.
Well, thanks again for having me on.
Oh, I'm going to have you on a lot. The more we look into this, the more. Every time I get to a point where I can't take it, I go, okay, this is a job for Paul Thompson.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Yeah, it's just, it's what happens when people put their head down and say, okay, I'm going to start reading. That's all he did, was he started reading newspapers and putting together all of the available news stories. None of them match what you saw last night. It's just intensely bizarre. They left the president out of being on vacation. They left out the fact that the president knew that an airplane had hit the World Trade Center when he walked into that classroom. They didn't show him in the classroom. They showed him at the beginning of the movie as if nothing had yet happened. That's what I mean. There's just enough truth. They use just enough clips and just enough truth. The thing I like about the 9/11 timeline that Paul put together, it doesn't make conclusions. It just gives you the links to the story so you can see what happened when, who made mistakes, who turned a blind eye, what was going on in the sky on 9/11, where was NORAD, that there were war games going on that were wargaming the exact scenario that was occurring, and that's why they didn't know, is this real or is this the exercise? No, this is really happening. It was meant to confuse our air defense. It's unbelievable what they did. 19 after.
The Randi Rhodes Show. No arrests, no indictments, just lots of conviction.